Grand Dawn and Great Rising, Cleveland, Ohio, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. It's a beautiful day here in the city. The sun is shining, but it's a little bit crisp outside. But, in a few days, bro, man is going to jump on one of those planes and get to somewhere warm, and I'm really looking forward to that. But until then, we shall proceed with the show. Our broadcast partner, Brother Hamtonio, is also away. He's taking a little vacation. We expect to have him back perhaps next week. And we have a great show lined up for you next week. Next week, we're going to have Professor M'Bwebe Ishangi, Dr. Craig Woodson, and we're also going to have Dr. Silas Ashley. And the subject is going to be Black History Month, transitioning to African Heritage Month. It was started by Carter G. Woodson 100 years ago, believe it or not. This is the 100th year of observing the history of Black people in America and on the planet. So we're really looking forward to that. Also, just want to let you know about something that my brother Wayne Chandler is going to be involved in next Saturday. It's going to be at the Phyllis Wheatley Association. That's at 4450 Cedar Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. And it is going to be the return of the matriarch. Brother Wayne is going to give us a lecture on the return of the matriarch. You can go to 216-527-7079. That's 216-527-7079 if you want more information. If you're interested in being a vendor at that event, give a call and see what you can do. The tickets will be $20 in advance, $25 day of the show. So check out my brother Wayne Chandler, author of Ancient Future, at the Phyllis Wheatley Association next Saturday, 3 p.m. The doors will open. I'm sure it's going to be a great program. Today, we have someone who I was just telling, I just have a lot of respect for him just based on his productivity and his output. He is an author, and he has written his first novel. It is called 2048, and it has a relationship of sorts to the book 1984. As when we get into this discussion, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. He's got other books under his belt. They're not fiction, but they're all relevant. And this fictional book is very relevant. So I'm going to not delay introducing you to him any longer. Great friend, great brother, and the supreme, ultimate Pan-Africanist, as you see the red, the black, and the green behind him. Welcome to 360 Info Network, brother M'Bwebe Ishangi. Brother, how are you today?
Mac, Blacknificent. Good to see you, brother. Always good to be back. And hello to all the listeners. Giving you all big shout outs. And again, it's great to be able to be here and celebrating African history. And it's being, the 100th year. That's something that folks, we got to really think about that. It's been 100 years that we just, and it's great that it's been 100 years, but it's only been 100 years. That's the other part. Yeah.
Well, part of the discussion that we're going to have next week with Doctors Ashley Woodson and Professor M'Bwebe Ishangi is just the relevance of Africa to Black history in America. The issue with the observance of Black History Month, as it was conceived by Carter G. Woodson, was that he was just as into Africa as he was America when it came to Black folk. And over a period of years after he transitioned, the focus and the themes that related to African history and culture were left out. So this is about a resurrection of that connection to Africa so that Black people in America understand what their relationship is to Africans, because we have to know who we are, what that connection is, and how that aligns with our purpose in the universe and on the planet. And if we don't know, we're disconnected from our power and we're less effective in the things that we could and should be doing. So I think it's a really important conversation to have, and we'll do that next Saturday. But today, we want to talk about this book that you've written. So tell us the complete title, because it's very loaded.
Yeah. The title is 2048, Sovereignty in the Age of Control, When Big Brother Merges with AI. And the preface of the book, really, I was inspired to write this book as I was writing my last book. Well, let me show you the cover real quick since we, got to do that. So here's the cover of the book, 2048. And this book was inspired as I was writing my book before that, From Railroads to Robots. Um, and, you know, it's interesting when you're writing one book that another book comes along and says, "Hey, I want you to write me first," and then I'm juggling writing two books at one time. But this book was necessary because, as mentioned, my other books, all of them have been fiction, nonfiction. I've been writing about history for 33 years, and I've covered all bases. Pretty much a number of bases that Neely's Fuller and Doctors Neely Fuller and Francis Cress Welsing have covered in the 10 Years of People Activity. Um, so as I was writing From Railroads to Robots, um, the thought of, okay, well, I had this download just came. This download just came to me and said, "Hey, you need to write this other story about what it looks like if and when AI takes over, and what will life look like?" Because you're writing about all these historical things. Well, let's give a visionary idea of what it looks like. And then it hit me that I had read, over 30 years ago, I read the book 1984 by George Orwell. And that was the introduction for me, at least, and probably for many, of the idea of Big Brother and being monitored and surveillance and, losing, all privacy and all those type of things. So again, the ancestors work in a certain kind of way, and I don't question it. I welcome it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to put it together? They just put this 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle in front of me and said, "Hey, put it together. All the pieces are there. You put it together." And I was able to write this book in roughly 3 days. And it was because I look back now and I see that all the work that I've done before prepared me to write this book, but not as nonfiction, but as fiction. And that's what really, I think, freed me as a writer, because now I'm able to really use my imagination. I could take the information that I know, that I've learned, that I've processed, and now I can bring in some creativity so that I can paint a picture of what I would like for us to see, or what I forecast is happening in the near future, just so the next generations can see that there is hope, that we have a possibility of coming out of this situation. Um, so yeah, when you think about 1984, George Orwell wrote this book in 1949, and the original title, what I learned, was that it was called 1948, and he changed the date to 1984 uh, for a couple of reasons. One of them is my theory. My theory was that in the 1950s, we're talking about, if you think about what was going on in the 1950s, uh, yeah, there was world wars and things of that nature, but for the most part, we're talking about, people pretty much have a trust in the US government. There's not that mistrust, like conspiracy wasn't even really a common word as it is today. Fake news, all those type of things, not believing in what our politicians say wasn't as, I say, alarming or loud as it may be today. And they're probably, well, not to say they weren't being corrupt back then, it's just that it wasn't out in the front for you to really see or know. But that era, where people are watching Leave It to Beaver and Andy Griffith show, they weren't watching like horror flicks and all these type of things that we see bombarded with all this negativity all day. So in seeing that time span, I could see where, if folks knew that the book was originally titled 1948 in their present state, and realize that the government is watching you, is doing these things to control you, there would probably be this big backlash, this panic, this craziness that would happen. And I'm not sure if the government was really capable of handling that as of yet. So I think that's one reason why he changed the date to 1984. Doing that allowed people of that present time to say, okay, well, it's coming, it's not here now, so I don't really have to worry about it. And that's the problem that we have, is that we don't have this generational passing of the baton. We're going to deal with our reality, and the next generation will figure it out, right? Not realizing the work that you don't do in your present time gets aired to the next generation. So now their problems are compounded because you didn't do anything. So I find that is also what happened with, it being prorated to 1984, that folks pretty much took their foot off the gas and didn't take these things serious. So this is what I learned that George Orwell was saying, is that if we do not take on these things head on, this is what's going to happen. So it's sort of like a prophecy. And so we can see today that those things have come to light. We've seen in the 1980s, we saw the movie Terminator. We saw Total Recall. We've seen all these movies that talked about the future where there's this split in society where there are those that complied and then there are those that didn't, that lived underground and they were scavenging and trying to live off of whatever they could. Um, well, we're seeing these things manifesting right now as we speak. And that's where I use the title for my book 2048 in honor of, or not in honor, but in reference to Orwell's original title of 1948. We are roughly 100 years from Big Brother, is at least it being exposed to society and what it does. Only this time, Big Brother has merged with AI. So this book is pretty much a synopsis in synoptics, a story of a young brother from Brooklyn, New York, who has this ancestral calling that, he just, you have this thing in your mind and your spirit that's constantly wanting to connect with you. And once he finds out there is a connection he has with another brother in Kigali, Rwanda. And during this state, 2048, they're under a police state. They're being controlled by AI. AI is monitoring everything. We're talking about futuristic type of things. And so this brother, his plight is to get back to Kigali, which is a sovereign city that fell under the grid, didn't fall under Big Brother's control, and they were basically in a venture to try and usurp the power of what I call BB48, or Big Brother 2048 for short. So it's an adventure, and not only is it an adventure, but it falls in the genre of African futurism. If I may, is a point where I can actually play the book trailer so folks can get an idea what it's about? All right.
Absolutely. In a world where your dreams are not your own, Big Brother didn't die, he just upgraded. They digitized our gods, but we encoded the truth, rhythm, myth, and harmony.
And memory.
And memory.
This isn't science fiction. This is a spiritual fact. Culture is the last code no machine can predict. Be in alignment with your assignment.
There it is.
Read 2048, Sovereignty in the Age of Control by M'Bwebe Ishangi. Out January 27, 2026.
So
Okay.
doing this
Yeah.
book, man, it really, this is really something that touches my soul because it allowed me to be as creative as I've always wanted to be as an artist. Not only in writing, but in visual graphics, animation, sound, and message, more importantly, the message. And so that's something that, this is really my greatest works to date. It's available in paperback, ebook, digital, PDF, and also in audiobook. I'll come out March 6th. One other thing I wanted to share too is that with this creating a fiction book, I started thinking about, and again, like ancestors were just like, yeah, we're gonna run with this. We're gonna put this stuff out, create this, create that. And I'm like, all right, I'm capable. I'm gonna do these things. And I can remember when we used to have when movies would come out and they would come out with a CD soundtrack, and this would be, compilations that would, help promote the book or, and, just stay in the same vibe of what the movie's about. And one day, as I'm writing and putting some things together, something hit me. Say, "Yeah, why don't you do a soundtrack to the book?" Now, I don't know if someone's ever done that before, and if so, that's great. I hadn't heard of it or thought about it, but I said, or seen it rather. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and make a soundtrack to the book. And in the soundtrack is clips of some of the music that I play that gets me motivated, keeps me in that higher frequency type of level of thinking. And then I brought in some of our master scholars and just took narratives of their lectures and talks and laid it over these tracks. And so now, I'm looking into doing, I'm doing music now and, creating music mixes and stuff. So I guess I can call myself a mixologist to some degree. And if I may, can I play this clip just to give you a taste of what this soundtrack is called, a frequency stream?
Yeah, I'm going to do that, but I just want to remind folks that some folks are listening on radio, so they can't see what we're seeing.
Got you.
So this is perhaps a nudge to you to check us out on YouTube, or you can go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page and you can see what we're doing live. So we'll bring that up right now.
2048, Sovereignty in the Age of Control, when Big Brother merged with AI. Out January 27th.
African bloodlines did not begin with suffering, they began with sovereignty. Africans carry the primordial Edenic codes, the original resonance of Earth in her untampered form. This isn't just spiritual, it's energetic biology. These codes are embedded in the mitochondrial DNA, in the melanin. And
on the other side, what you find on the other side is what you take with you. So if you take fear with you, then fear will be there on the other side. So step into that space.
Swaziland.
There you go.
We cannot ask the people who programmed us into oblivion to program us out of it. Education has but one honorable purpose, one alone. Everything else is nonsense. And that is to train the student to be a respectful and a responsible handler of power. People do not train you in how to take their power away from them when they hold power by controlling you. To expect this of other people is a contradiction in terms. Freedom is something you do not wish upon, you do not dream upon. Freedom is something you take with your own hands. When people dictate the content of education, they're dictating what goes into your mind. And when they dictate that, they're going to dictate your action, and though you might lie about it. So long as you are in this position, you are some form of a slave. Free yourself from it. Do not expect others to do it for you. We stop begging at the door of people who reduced us to beggars.
What I dreamt wasn't real till I met you. What I felt.
Read 2048, Sovereignty in the Age of Control, when Big Brother merged with AI. Out January 27th.
Just a couple of things, brother. First of all, you invoked back in the day Cornel West doing spoken word over music. Mm-hmm. So you took it to the next level. I'm thinking, you're giving Questlove some competition. But secondly, that is a brilliant idea. A soundtrack for a book. I don't think I've ever heard that, but what you just shared with us was an impetus to connect with this, because there's just so much richness in the voices that you hear along with the music and the music itself. I was hearing Roy Ayers for a moment, mm-hmm. and it's ironic, and I know this is just kind of an aside, but I was on YouTube the other night and I heard someone describe a 6-2-5-1 chord progression.
Mm.
So I went to my piano and I started playing this 6-2-5-1 chord progression. And then yesterday I discovered that if I start with C, I'm playing the song Roy Ayers wrote called The Third Eye.
Mm.
And I was
Mm.
hearing that when I
Yeah.
was listening to your track, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is how all of this comes together. So
Yeah.
you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, man. As every time, music to me has always been sustenance. And I've always been, you know, from the day, and that's the thing is that what is music but its frequency, it's sound, right? And there's so many things in music, not just a feeling, but it's code. It's binary. It's something that touches your not only inner soul, but it goes into your bones. It makes you want to move. This is what makes us so rhythmic, right? But we look at it just as a gyrating type of thing, and it's not just that. It's something that is frequencies that's feeding your body, feeding your soul. And so being a music lover as I've always been, when I still play this several times a week. Not to blow my head up, but because of what I have in there are tracks that I wish I was in the studio when these musicians were making these tracks. I wish I was that fly on the wall. And then when you lace over a John Henry Clark or a Baba Jegna Anthony Browder, when you put scientific folk on there, there's one in there that I have. It's a poem called Assignments for Return Before Returning to Earth. And this thing, I mean, this poem is so deep in regards to making you realize that this experience we have here on earth is so temporary, that we've come from somewhere else, and that there's someone that devised a plan or instructions on how to operate when you come here. And what is your mission? And that's why having there, be in alignment with your assignment. We're here for a reason. This isn't the end all to be all. There's something more before and after this. So the goal is to get here, earn your stripes, and return, as the poem said, return with some great stories and some scars and great stories. So music to me, I felt like, well, how can I get folks to one? Reading has been one of, I'll say, it's been indoctrinated that it's a challenge for us. We're not interested in reading. So okay, I'll do the audiobook. That's great. But what if I bring in music? And I know I'm not the originator of putting music over, narratives, but I said I want to do my part. And so this is where I really feel like when you play something that it taps into the listener, and that's the type of energy I want you to bring when reading 2048.
Mm. I interviewed Dr. Katrina Hazard Donald yesterday, and she's explored hoodoo in America. And her first book was about juking. But
Mm.
one of the things that she brings out is the fact that there were things called a ring shout.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are part of our cultural tradition that involve dance.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me that there was a time in our history where the enslaved would get rewarded by having an opportunity to dance.
Mm.
So it was about dance, it was about music, it was about all those things, but it's just we need to have all those things. So for you to use it in that way, it's one of the ways that you can raise your vibrational level without even really knowing that that's what's happening.
Right.
And I know because we understand the importance of frequencies.
Yes.
But yeah, so
This is
go
how
ahead.
you tap into that. So in the book itself is not about, when you think of your thrillers. Oh, let me make this point before I go there. Is I spoke about the genre being African futurism, and that's a coined phrase that I recently adopted after learning it from Nnedi Okafor. I'm sorry, Okorafor. That's what it is, Okorafor. And she is a novelist. And there's another one, N.K. Jemisin. One of the things that N.K. Jemisin said was, in the future, as in the present, as in the past, Black people will build many new worlds. This is true. I will make it so, and you will help me. we are in this state where we are not aware of our true power. And the genre of African futurism, which is actually a promotion from Afrofuturism, because as Nnedi talked about, is that Afrofuturism is more isolated to America. Okay, when you bring in the African future and you remove the Afro to African futurism, it's more diasporic, it's global, it includes the entire world in our story. So that's something that I'm also promoting, is the point of understanding the importance of getting into genres of African futurism. Your Octavia Butler's, who was a master novelist about in African futurism. What we're doing is, we're not talking about space and Star Trek. We're talking about creating our immediate future by writing about it, by exposing us to it, by setting examples. When we see these things, then we can actually picture it. And then guess what follows is we go and create it. So that was the whole point of writing this novel. I understand now, looking back, when I was tapped to write this book, when it came to me as this download, I didn't realize the enormity of doing this book. It freed me as an artist. It also inspired me to be able to reach folks in a different kind of way, because I understand when you write about history and facts, if a person isn't a historian, if a person doesn't like to read, they may read it, but it won't stick. They won't do further research, etc. But if you can create a story and you allow that person, you create these sheroes and heroes, people can be educated through entertainment. You know what I mean? So that's what KRS-One came up with the word edutainment, is that this is that type of thing where you can be both educated about our history, not even realizing it, but then also there's an entertainment factor where you have this, these heroes and sheroes fighting these foes, and they actually are able to succumb to their power. So that's the nature of writing. I would say the difference in writing fiction versus nonfiction is that it really allows me to create the victory that I want us to see. Just as Orwell did what he did in 1984, creating this unfortunate downward spiral, this is where we pick up the baton and continue it. And if I may, with that, this is where I can see the things happening, is if we understand the history of cycles, that one of the things that we are experiencing is what's called a saculum. And a saculum is actually derived from Strauss-Howe generational theory, where they say that roughly every 21 years, there's a new generation that comes about and they want to do some societal, political, and economic changes. We go through these cycles. But then when you cumulate these cycles into four, basically a saculum is the compilation of those four cycles is roughly 85 years. So it's interesting to note that I'll even round it off to 100, as when I wrote my book, From Railroads to Robots, I'm looking at the works of what John D. Rockefeller did in regards to controlling the oligarchs, one of the most notorious oligarchs of our time, where he's controlled not only the oil industry, but he's controlled the educational and the pharmaceutical and medical industry. And so we're seeing the remnants of his misdeeds today, when we see that we have the highest forms of mortality. We have the worst health in decades, probably in the last 100 years. I remember my grandmother used to say that the food that I ate when I was younger doesn't taste like the food it is today. So she's like, I still eat meat, but the meat is different. It really isn't meat today. So we're seeing that the work that he did over 100 years ago, this is the remnants of that. This is the results of that. And so now today, people think it's common for you to be sick. I had my physical this past week, my annual physical, and the doctor was amazed at 56 that I'm not on any medications. I said, well, that should be normal. You shouldn't be on anything. It doesn't matter what age you are, but we are not told that you have permission to age gracefully, that you have permission to, when you transition, that your body is an asset to the land and not anything the opposite. So these are type of things that we're actually seeing with this cyclic change of a society that is going through a dramatic change, which means it will get chaotic, it might get crazy, it probably will be detrimental for a lot of folks. We all might not make it, but at that point, we're also seeing the reemergence of something new. So I actually am celebrating this era. And I think with music, with sound, with frequency, with tapping into your ancestors, pull up those old lectures and resurrect the spirits of our scholars who have done the work and play them in your mind so that when we don't have electricity, if that happens, you can recall on that to pull up your energy, to keep you focused, to keep you moving forward for the next generations that are depending on us. This is important. And that's the reason why I think the book 2048 as well.
Couple of things. One, when you look at what could happen in the future, and I'm sure some of that is what is in the text of your book, those things are happening now.
Absolutely.
You know, when you talk about surveillance, you know, I'm gonna take a flight in a few days, and I've been online, and you know how algorithms work on YouTube. You start watching one thing, and then they keep sending you different things. So I came across this video that was talking about the level of surveillance that happens in airports. And they're actually scanning your bodily functions and doing like infrared, seeing, you know, you're sweating, you know, you got heat here, there. And so one of the things that was said was that if you get pulled over, randomly selected, randomly, it's not random.
No, they've been looking at
They were watching you as soon as you walked into the airport.
Yep.
You know, and you could go into a Starbucks, for instance, and they've got technology that's watching everybody in the store. It's monitoring the employees. It monitors how many cups of coffee they pour. So if you got somebody that just poured 5 and you got somebody that poured 20, somebody's slacking off.
Right.
And there's a digital record of that. You know, so we keep thinking about stuff being down the road, but it's happening. It's happening now.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about chaos and confusion. You talked about electricity being out. Well, you know, there's conspiracy theory that the cold snap that we've been through for the past 5-6 weeks was something that was actually engineered. I can't corroborate that, you know, but there are people who look into those things and they'll give you information about that, you know. And so there were people who were without power, without electricity. You know, the dystopian things that are projected to be down the road are things that are happening now.
Right.
But the things that we can be doing is being aware, being prepared, and doing what we have to do to keep our vibrational level high so that those things don't affect us. And that is our protection. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, as light workers, because that's what you are. That's what I am. I acknowledge that. You know, that's why we're having this conversation right now. You know, so those of us who, I'm just going to use this term loosely, on that level, have protections. You know, having conversations with Wayne Chandler, he talks about this all the time. You know, so you're doing your qigong practices. That's going to raise your vibrational level. You know, another thing that I wanted to get to was just the idea of seeing a movie or reading a book and the impact that it has on you. I'm a media person. I'm on a list. I get to see previews of movies before they come out. I go to you know, advanced screenings of things. I think I mentioned the movie to you, Begonia. I'm not sure if okay. There's a film called Begonia, and the film is about this guy that's a beekeeper who works at a company that's like Monsanto. And his mother is in a coma because she was exposed to a chemical that this company produced. And so he wants to get reciprocity of some sort. He wants to save his mother. So what he does, he and his autistic cousin, they kidnap the CEO of this company and they hold her hostage. And the reason that he did this is because he wanted to be beamed up to the spaceship where the aliens were that were controlling the planet. He wanted to control the planet. He wanted to save the planet. Okay.
Wow.
I can't tell you the whole story, and I don't want to ruin it for folks, but I have to.
Go ahead. Yeah, you can't take it this far.
And this is because what you said resonated so greatly with me about controlling the narrative and the imagination of what's down the line. So if you take their imagination, once again, it puts us in a place of victimhood. But when we imagine a future and we imagine us being in the winner's circle, then we can project that reality ourselves.
Facts.
So I went to this film, and I'm sorry, folks, spoiler alert. If you don't want to know the ending, you know, turn the volume down for a few moments. But the end of this film was the CEO was actually an alien. She went up to the spaceship. She stood over some contraption. She did a few things, and after she did what she did, everybody on Earth was dead.
Wow.
All the humans were dead. So it's difficult to see something like that and just get up out your seat and walk out the theater.
Right.
I mean, I saw that and I'm like, I know about predictive programming. I know that the Central Ignorance Agency is tied to Hollywood, and they have a hand in scripts and endings and all of that. So I'm like, there's a reason that they're showing us that. You see. So what we have to do, and we talked about this before we came on the air today, what we have to do is we have to create a counter narrative.
There you go.
That's what we have to do. And I think that's what you've done with this book.
Absolutely. And may I ask, you said it's the book, the movie's about bees?
No, it's about the beekeeper.
Yeah. So bees are involved.
Mm-hmm.
And if we understand, most folks, you know, are probably just now getting exposed to. If you're not, you need to do some research on about the importance of bees, because we want to kill them, swat them away. We need bees because bees pollinate the flowers, pollinate the plants and things of that nature in the spring. And Wi-Fi is messing them up. You know, cell phones, and obviously there's Wi-Fi. All these type of technological advances are actually making things harder for them. And the water shortage, because they have to now, they have certain, I don't know what the technological terms are, the scientific terms are, but basically they're wired in such a way that naturally they can smell where the sweet flowers are to go get the nectar. But because of the frequencies, it's messing up with their ability to sense these things. So now their flights to go and find these, you know, pollinated trees that need to be pollinated, they can't find them. And it's messing up with them neurotically because it's impairing their way to find their ways back to the hive. So we're seeing that we need bees more than anything else. And, you know, again, we see them, we want to go get some, you know, whatever wasp killer to kill them, when in actuality, they're not even bothering us. Yeah, they'll fly by, and yeah, we're worried about getting stung, but they only sting if you mess with them. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to walk around and have a bunch of bees on me. No, I would, I would go crazy. But the point is that, you know, we don't understand the connection of everything that we need. And so if something is happening on that small scale where bees are having the inability to collect pollen and reach home, that's on a minute scale. It's only going to, if you continue to have the situation, it's going to get larger, and it's going to affect us eventually. Well, we'll be walking around not able to find ourselves home. You know what I mean? So we have to understand that everything is interconnected, and the way that this technological world is booming is going in that self-destruction type of mode. But this is the opportunity, as you mentioned, for us to become involved. Let's learn about these scientists and what is our counter. Do we need beekeepers? Absolutely. Do we need code writers? Absolutely. Do we need to know how to harness power without being on the industrial grid? Absolutely. Do we need to know how to capture water? These are things that, in case, and it's not a doomsday type of mentality, it's an independent mentality. If we think about before we became dependent on this industrial grid of having water and getting our food from their markets, etc., we did for ourselves. Our great grandparents farmed. And they didn't farm because they were poor. They farmed because they were self-reliant. They didn't have to worry about somebody feeding them because they could feed themselves. They could collect their own water. They could create their own shelter. We got disillusioned, thanks to Rockefeller and party, to do away with doing for self and trade for getting these digital not digital, but these certificates of higher training for these jobs that he conditioned us to be as workers and not thinkers. And now we're finding out the jobs are no longer being here because they're being replaced by AI. So we're actually being forced to become independent and farming and all. We're being forced to do that. Now, it's not going to be a choice. If you want to eat, if you don't have food, you better learn how to grow some. So this is actually, again, and I'll use the Adinkra symbol or the Adinkra term Akaben. This is the call to arms for people to wake up and understand that it's going to take, if you want to survive, you're going to have to take on certain skills. And we're not talking about skills that'll get you a 6-figure paying job, but skills that are just allow you to keep food on your table. How do you create heat without having firewood? How do you, all these type of things that we're going to need to know, because eventually, if a grid goes down, that's one thing. Another one is that you're going to have to make a choice. You either get chipped or you don't. And, most people say, I'm never getting chipped, but you'll be the first one in line when your belly starts growling or you don't have shelter over your head.
Mm-hmm. And they sell you on doing those things because of the convenience. So you can just walk into the store and wave your hand over a sensor and it automatically deducted money out of your account that they have control over. So if you do something that they disagree with, they shut the account down, and then you got to go find some fruits and some nuts and berries because you can't buy anything from the store. We got to step away for just a few moments, but we will be right back with more 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. Stick with us, and we will be back momentarily with M'Bwebe Ishangi. He is the author of 2048, and we will talk more about that when we get back. Stay with us, y'all.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Welcome back to 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer. Cleveland Observer is doing some great things. I'm connected with a few of the writers, and I suggested to one of them that they do an article about this young brother named Aaron Williams, calls himself Awful Aaron. And I looked at the newspaper the other day, and I saw a wonderful article that was written about him. So I encourage you to go online, check out the Cleveland Observer. It is actually in print as well. So there are different locations in the city that you can find the newspaper, and do what you can to support a great African-American publication right here in Cleveland. If you're just joining us, I'm having a conversation with M'Bwebe Ishangi. He is the author of several books, but his first book of fiction, his first novel, 2048, it is a wonderful book. I'm waiting for my copy to get here. And when I'm on that plane, I'm going to read it because I got 6 hours to get there and 3 hours to get back. So I'm sure I can knock it out in 9 hours. I'm really looking forward to it. Brother M'Bwebe, we were talking about AI and jobs just a few moments ago. And one thing that I'm noticing is that a lot of companies are firing or laying off workers. And one of the reasons that it is happening is because technology is enabling them to get those things done by artificial intelligence and robots and not people. So if you take a dystopian view of the future, you will find that they say there are too many people on the planet. They say that we can't feed everybody. We can't put everybody to work. So you got this depopulation agenda that's juxtaposed against our reality. And so there are some jobs that will have to be, they'll continue to exist simply because robots can't do them. I mean, yes, you have doctors that do what they do, and you have robots that assist in the surgery, but some of the basic things, humans will continue to do. But on the other hand, people have to start rethinking their future simply because the opportunities that they are projecting to be in the future won't exist. So I'm just wondering, what does the future look like without those jobs for folks to go to, and with the prospect of universal basic income? Wondering if you've ever done any research or thoughts about that possibility.
Yeah, I actually go deeply into that in my book, From Railroads to Robots. I have a section about AI, and we talk about, what the current oligarchs are planning, those being Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, etc. And, you know, corporations that, yeah, as you mentioned, they are laying people off by the thousands, mainly because they are, through automation, they're seeing that, okay, well, one, it's advantageous. I mean, when we look at it from a business perspective, you can't blame them, because it really is about X's and O's, right? It's about profit. And if you can have a robot or some sort of automation do the task that a human would do, and that automation is a 24/7, has the ability to work 24/7, doesn't take water breaks, doesn't need vacations, doesn't need to get paid, doesn't complain, yet, until they develop a conscience. But the point is that you can work them and not worry about what humans do. There is no, there's no slavery clause in having robots, right? Because they're not human. So as a business, if you want to stay competitive, the bottom line is trimming the fat, and we are the fat. The paying a salary, being paid, having to pay insurance, vacations, etc. Those things are pulling from their bottom line. So if you can eliminate that cost, there's more profit, obviously, right? So from a business perspective, we can't blame. This is what capitalism is. Now, what happens to those folks that are let go is the next thing in question, because if you can think about, and I've talked about this in my other book, Apocalypse and Intergenerational Planning for Black People, is that no one's job is safe. That regardless of your age, regardless of your profession, but even if you're at a point where in your, say, 50s or 60s, or you're about to retire, a few years from retirement, and you're losing your job, or even if you're in your 30s, not having anything else lined up in your profession because it's no longer in demand, now you have to learn a whole new trade. And in most cases, that trade, to learn it, may come a cost. You might have to go back to school, etc., take out loans and get even further debt. But all the while, you're chasing a job that may not even be here within the next 5 or 10 years. So this is where the conversation comes up with UBI, Universal Basic Income, where even Elon Musk is saying in about 10 to 20 years, you won't need to work at all, because, there'll be no work for you. So we won't have to work. You'll get basically this stipend, right? Now, to the average person, they think, oh, great, I ain't got to work. You're going to pay me to live? Trust me, you're not going to be living high on the horse, and there's going to be some compliance that you will have to agree to be part of this UBI system. The Euro Central Bank just came out a few months ago talking about how they're creating a digital lockdown on money by 2029, whereas basically your digital ID is going to be tied to your funds, so that if you want to have access to these monies to live off of, you're going to have to follow these rules. You're going to have to give up your privacy. You're going to have to let us into everything, and we're going to follow you. We're going to manage your money. We can cut it off if we want to, possibly. And more importantly, we can violate you if you say the wrong things. Your speech is going to be taken away from you. So there isn't it's a raw deal, but because most folks are not planning to sustain themselves, and they are going to comply and become part of the system because they don't know how else to do it, because that's been taken from us, because through the public school systems, we don't have arts and crafts. We don't do gardening. We don't do these things anymore. And most folks don't have the interest in doing it because we'd rather binge on watching Netflix, that we have stopped capturing water. We have stopped galvanizing seeds. We have stopped canning. I remember my grandmother's basement used to be full of canned pickles, jellies, whatever else. And she told me because, World War II wasn't that long ago. So most folks don't have food to ration more than 2 weeks. Let's not talk about bank accounts as well. But the point is that so those folks are primed to comply, which is what they want. And most people, because as my Jegna would tell me, the master asks, that people are afraid to do their own thing. So when they see everybody else is doing something, they're going to go and do it. When the few people got the jab, everybody else followed and got the jab. Very few people said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to sit back and wait. Those are the folks that I'm trying to speak to, that understand that, okay, we need to learn how to, again, as I mentioned, learn how to do for self. Not just in knowledge and awareness, but also implication and application of what you're doing. Are you farming? Are you knowing how? And even if you don't have acreage, there's vertical gardening. There's, get some soil in the pot and throw a seed in there and grow something. And then learn how to create a community that perhaps you can barter if necessary. So these are the type of worlds that's evolving in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I want to speak to that because I'm aware of some communities that are actually implementing that strategy. So I want to talk about some of the alternatives to the system of control that's built into the title of your book. We can talk about sovereignty. We can talk about some of the things that we can do to perhaps stave off some of the incursions into our privacy and our ability to be self-sufficient and sovereign when we return. I just want to mention a few more things before we make our transition over to YouTube and Facebook. And thank you to everyone who is viewing us on YouTube right now. We really appreciate you. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is Vince Robinson. You can also go to The Journey with Hamtonio and view our program from his YouTube platform. We also have 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can go there and you can get content, and you can also view our show right there. So we welcome you to do that. Also, just another reminder about the program that's going to be at it's going to be at the Phyllis Wheatley Association next Saturday at 3 to 5. And it's my brother, Wayne Chandler. Also, I just want folks to know about the program that's happening at Karamu. That will be next Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. There are going to be some elders in our community who are going to be recognized. It's going to be music and poetry and dance and a great program. Unfortunately, it is sold out, but if you are one of the lucky people who has a ticket, I'm sure that you will enjoy it. I want to give a shout out to our brother Tone Harley, who is in the control room doing what he does, making sure that we are on the air and broadcasting live. We appreciate him. He had a day off last week, but we welcome him back, and we always welcome you to join us right here on AM 1490 WERE 360 Info Network. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace. All right, we are live on YouTube with M'Bwebe Ishangi. We're talking about this great novel that he has written, 2048. It's got a rather long title. I'd like to give him the opportunity to give that all to you. And we're talking about the present and we're talking about the future. We've got this forecast that there won't be jobs for folks to go to. We're talking about the fact that they're going to have complete control of your money, or at least partly complete control of your money. But there's this world called decentralized finance. So I want to explore that a bit. And I know that Brother M'Bwebe is very heavily involved in that world. So let's talk about decentralized finance. Do you think that it is an alternative to the system of control that they want to place us under with central bank digital currencies? And some folks are saying, even if it's not a central bank digital currency, they're going to have stable coins, and the stable coins are backed by US treasuries, and they'll have programmability. And if they want to shut things down, I mean, you look at what happened in Canada a few years ago. We didn't even have CBDCs back then, and they shut bank accounts down for the truckers and the sympathizers too. So what are you seeing? Do you think that it's possible for us to exist in a decentralized financial world that will give us access to real world assets, control of those assets, and an ability to survive this dystopian future that they're creating for us?
Wow, that's in theory, yes, I think that it's possible. But when I think about, if it's one thing that I understand about global white dependency, those folks that plan this current state that we're in and the future, they're having meetings about things they've already had these meetings. They've already created their plans. And so, if you think about back in what 2010, 2013, around that era, everyone was against, let's just say, Bitcoin. Everyone that was against cryptocurrency, and they were saying it's never going to last, not going to turn into anything, and they would never get involved. And now we see folks like Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank. He has invested heavily in blockchain a few years back. So they are trying to, if they cannot control cryptocurrencies, for instance, they are definitely wanting to be in the front of the line as far as being able to, those that are receiving. So in theory, yes, I would think that decentralized currency could enable folks to exist in this world with sovereignty. The only challenge that comes to mind, or that always comes to the forefront of my mind when I think about this, is the fact that we're consumers, and the fact that we still need their products. So it's as though if I went to a foreign country that doesn't accept the US dollar, and I wanted to pay them for something with my US dollar, they can say, I don't want it. This is not worth anything here. So no, you can't have this coconut water. So these are the things that I'm worried about, is that, it's not so much about the product that you use to purchase things with. It's the ability to have something that is worth exchanging. I think really, outside of decentralized currencies, is the ability to barter is going to give you more leverage. If you have something that is of value that someone wants, then you could trade for that. So that, to me, also gives you more, that gives you the sovereignty, that gives you the independence, and that allows you to trek the type of journey that you want to have in regards to exchange for goods. So that's where, again, in theory, I want to believe that decentralized currency can happen, but I understand also that they're hard at work, always trying to control something, or at least be in the front of it. So, I can't really. I'll say I'm losing a little bit of faith in what I used to think about with cryptocurrencies, and being decentralized, given the autonomy and all these type of things. But we're seeing right now that the market has been bad. It's been dictated by Wall Street, by the global economy, by tariffs. So, and I never would have thought, in theory, Bitcoin was supposed to be able to do its own thing. Now it's hovering at, it can't even break 70,000 now, and it was at 120,000 maybe six months ago. It's not to say that it won't get back there, but it's being dictated now by fiat and other global currencies. So I'm wondering, like, just how stable it may be, how will it be able to do the things that we in theory thought it would be able to do. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I think what we're seeing is a paradigm shift away from fiat currencies and over to digital currencies. So, I mean, the last time I checked, there were like 21,000 relevant cryptocurrencies. There have been millions created, but not all of them really amounted to anything. But you do have a core of cryptocurrencies that will be relevant simply because they're part of the new financial system that they're designing for the blockchain. You know, the idea that a company like BlackRock or Vanguard or any of those others could accumulate so much right now pushes away from the idea of of decentralized, because, you know, if you have all this wealth controlled by a small, then you're just basically repeating the same thing that you had before. But, you know, the fact that currency is being debased, the US dollar is losing its value, is losing its grip as the world reserve trading currency. The Chinese are buying petroleum with the yuan, and the Russians and the Chinese are working together to debase the US currency simply because, for one, the United States wielded the weapon of freezing assets to the tune of, what was it, 500 million, you know, as a result of the Ukraine war. So countries around the world are saying, well, hey, you know, we don't want to be on the losing end of that proposition. So they're moving towards other things. And now you have a currency that's been created by the BRICS that's partly connected to gold. That's part of that equation. So we're seeing a paradigm shift. And, you know, Bitcoin is the big player in the cryptocurrency world, but it's not the only player.
Right.
And some see Bitcoin as a store of value, but then when you look at it going from $121,000 to 60 something $1,000, then you think, well, you know, there's a lot of volatility there. I don't know if I want my assets to be in something that's so volatile. And then you have something like XRP, which is going to be used to move money around the world and will have to have a certain value just to facilitate the plans of the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and so forth and so on. So I guess the moral of the story is you have to know what you're dealing with in that world in order to be successful. And most of the people on the planet have no idea.
No.
Because they've been scared away from it, you know, and they see it as a risky proposition. But this is against the backdrop of those money managers including it in the portfolios for their investors. So just thinking about that and the fact that you have a limited supply, only 21 million Bitcoin actually being minted, you know, you've got a finite supply of something that is seen as a store of value. And then you have juxtaposed against that something that is expanding because they keep creating so much more of it, you know. So how long is it before the United States becomes Zimbabwe or Venezuela with the debasement of currency that results in you walking into a store with a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread?
Right.
You know, so
Exactly.
so I guess I'm saying all of that to say that, you know, I think the digital currency is the new, it's the new, and the legacy system is being phased out. So I think it's going to be relevant. You know, there are some people who say, well, you know, Bitcoin might lose all of its value. I don't know that I see that happening just based on, you know, the economics of it. So, but I wanted to mention this, M'Bwebe, because again, I saw a video of some folks who have a community somewhere in this country where they have solar panels, where they have access to an aquifer. They have people in this community. One is a beautician. She's got a chair. She's got beauty products. People can come and get their hair done for free, get products for free. They got chickens. They got cows. They got goats running around like a village in Ghana. You know, they are self-sufficient, and currency is not a means of control within their community because they have a brotherhood, a sisterhood, familyhood, and the way they see it, we're doing what we have to do to survive. It's kind of a dystopian situation when you think about it, but on the other hand, they're not caught up in the things that are creating the chaos and confusion and the uncertainty. And, you know, we can't go to Walmart and, you know, get our Cheetos and our Doritos and all of that. So they have created a certain level of self-sufficiency. Do you see that as becoming more pervasive as we move towards the dystopian society that you describe in your book?
1000%. And I'm all for it. Because it gives me that the idea of the back to the future type of mentality of, using Sankofa to understand that, we've now the current industrial system that we live in is really just over a century or years old. Again, we could, if you had any great grandparents, and I'm talking about our age great grandparents that were still here, they could tell you life was much different. And so they did toil land, they did grow food, and they even worked a 9 to 5. But my grandfather had a huge garden in his backyard. When he came home from work, he went and worked on his garden. So it was embedded in us to take care of ourselves, to be self-reliant, not to depend on someone. And again, the psychosis to me is the biggest part. We're under this spell. We've had this cultural, and in addition to a cultural, we had an industrial lobotomization, a lobotomy rather, of our mindset to do for self. We have been programmed to accept others to do for ourselves things that we can do for ourselves very well. And so it's really about those folks. We just need examples. This is why, I also teach STEAM and or STEM, is that, we've created societies. And I'm not just saying what we did in Kemet. We've done things, we talk about, people want to talk about Black Wall Street. Well, there were, Jessica Gordon Nimhard talked about how there were over 600 Black Wall Streets. So we created communities not only just primarily out of the need, because no one else would help us. So we helped ourselves, but it also gave empowerment. It enabled us. And because we did so well at it, that's why they created this system to pull us away from and make us think that Joe's ice is colder than ours. So they integrated us because we did so well doing for ourselves, because they wouldn't give us the chance or the day of light. So I welcome, I promote, I can't speak enough about seeing these examples of folks that are creating their own tribe. It doesn't have to be a town. It could just be a family of 2 or 3 different families, and you start and you scale from there. But we have examples out there, and it really comes down to creating, growing, cultivating a product that you can barter. And at the baseline of it all, when people think, well, what is it that I should create, or what is it that I do? Water, food, shelter. Those are the 3 things we need to survive. You can get away. You don't have to have power. Yeah, people go crazy without having Wi-Fi, but you can live without it. You can't live without water, can't live without food, and you can't live without shelter. So if you concentrate on just those 3 things, or one of those 3 things, and then find someone else to pick up the other 2, then you're creating a community. And that gives you the ability to say yes or no when they come and say comply or not. You don't have to tell them no, but just don't comply, because you can take care of yourselves. These are things that I project in 2048. It's a natural thing. We think that hard work and working the land and growing food, you're poor. No, you're actually very rich. If you have a backyard full of fruit trees, you never have to go to whole paycheck to buy food. It's in your backyard. So think about how much money you're saving. All you got to do is go out there, and you got to cut and weed and all that. That's work, but it's also feeding you. So we just have to understand that get out of the mentality of having someone do for you and do for self. It's as simple as that.
Well, when you talk about feeding yourself, it's really so much about convenience. You can walk into the store and pick up a plastic bag and open it, and you eating, But when you do that, you don't really take into consideration all that had to happen for those things to be created.
Yeah.
And so part of the scaling of these products is to use a whole bunch of cheap ingredients to maximize the profit. And then you eat something that's a whole bunch of chemicals. I remember Dr. Layla Africa talking about that. You eat these refined products, but then when you understand how nature is, your body is a food processor.
Oh,
You eat the apple, you chew it up. The digestion process starts as soon as your saliva starts flowing. You
yes.
know, and then if your body is well tuned, within an hour, it comes out the other end.
Yep.
You know, so basically what he said, and I can say this because we ain't on the radio, but basically what he said is, you're eating shit.
Yeah.
you know,
Yep. Absolutely.
you know.
Why would you eat?
So the whole idea is, when you have all that stuff taken away from you that is created in the interest of capitalism and consumerism, you know, because we're the ultimate consumers on the planet. I mean, you know, we the ones walking around with $300 sneakers on because they make us feel good about ourselves and they get us respect in our community, you know. But the consumerism is what's killing us, because the food that we're consuming is killing us. So
Yes.
if you were growing your own, then you would be in a completely different paradigm, because you wouldn't be taking in the things that Rockefeller left for us to live on over 100 years later.
I got it, man. Thank you for going there. That's a great segue, because this is why I'm gonna bring up this title again. From railroads to robots, the evolution of power and wealth, eugenics role in oligarchs and monopolies. And I know I do have long titles. My son gets on me about it all the time, but I'm like, look, I gotta get your attention and tell you what this is all about. But anyway, there's a chapter that I have on Rockefeller, and it talks about how he is controlled everything. I don't know if this is backwards or not. I hope it is. It looked like it's backwards. But anyway, in this book, it talks about pretty much the whole design of the industry, the food industry. And we are so dependent on foods that aren't even really foods anymore. They're not even foods. They're made in labs. And this is why I can remember those conversations with my grandmother that told me that food tastes a lot different than it is now, and it's more available. Think about this. The main food that folks eat per day is chicken and fish and beef, right? So I did this for my STEAM class. I did this before, living in New York City, 9 million people. I just did this round number. If people are eating 3 meals a day, 9 million people, that's 27 million meals that has to be created, right? Let's just say 80% of those meals consist of fish, chicken, and beef. So I don't know what the number breakdown of that is, but I'm sure it's about 20 million, right? So that means there needs to be 20 million plates of fish, steak, beef, whatever, and chicken per day. Where on the planet can you see that amount at one time? Now, maybe fish, maybe. Cows? No. Chickens? Not at all. So, and that's just for 1 day consumption, because tomorrow we need another 27 million meals or 20 million meals. So what if you can't see that many chickens and cows and fish being laying somewhere about, as we were told they're grazing out in the yard and out eating hay and whatnot, then where are they? What is it that we're eating? And so that's what really was an easy go for me. That I did this 30 years ago when I gave up meat. I understood easily that this is stuff being manufactured. It's not the real thing. And you're not eating that one chicken. You're not eating that one cow. It's a compilation. They're grinding it up and putting it. Some of it they're eating themselves because they're repurposing. We have no idea what we're eating. And I give shouts out to, Layla Africa for the work that he did. He was a great, great Jegna of mine. And all the other writers that, and historians and nutritionists that writes about, and our current ones today that talk about the importance of diet, because that's the one thing that holds us alive right now. And we're wondering why we are these walking, as Layla said, we're these walking graveyards. We're eating these fast decaying foods, but we're not relieving ourselves. So, we're having these foods in us for decades, and we're wondering why our energy is low, our breath stink, our body smells, and we have no input or output as far as energy from our bodies because we are killing ourselves slowly. And who's telling us to do this? The guys in the white lab coats who refuse to ask you about your nutrition when you come to see them for a physical. Instead, they want to give you some prescription for your high blood pressure. So these are the things that we're facing, is that there's so many, and I get it. It's and I'm sure you understand too, brother. When you wake up, it's like there's so many things that you have to try to readdress and unlearn and then apply those things. You're trying to Africanize yourself, which means you're going to have to look at your diet. You're going to have to look at your spiritual system. You're going to have to look at your psychology of how you think and process information. And so it can become overwhelming. You're like, you know what, forget it. I don't have time. I'm just going to let it be because I don't have the time or energy because there's so much. That's how, and this is why I'm so happy for the works of Drs. Neely Fuller and Francis Cross-Welsing, who broke it down into 10 areas. If you look at these 10 areas, this is that blueprint that global white dependency uses to keep you in this mind state. So if you can attack those 10 areas and address those, you have a better chance of living better. Yeah, it'll be chaotic because you're probably an anomaly in your family, but hopefully you can be that example to inspire and you'll find tribe along the way.
Yeah, and it really is about being an example, because it's a very powerful phenomenon. When people can look at you and say, like they look at me sometimes and I tell them how old I am and they be like, what? But look, I'm doing everything that I can, exercising, eating good food. Most of the meals that I eat, I prepare myself.
Absolutely.
And it's like when you go out to eat, you're rolling the dice because you don't know what you got.
Man, even if you get a vegan burger, you think that they cook that vegan burger in some vegan oil? They put in the same oil they made that Whopper in.
Yeah,
we got
and the same oil that they used 2 or 3 days ago,
and the oil that's runoff from Rockefeller's oil.
Yeah,
it's also toxic.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it really is a roll of the dice. So I think the best thing that you can do in order to know what you're eating is to buy it yourself.
Facts.
You go to Denny's, you go to Red Lobster, it's going to be bioengineered. It's going to be full of chemicals and fillers and all that other kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it tastes good. Mm-hmm. It's engineered to taste good, but then, you're following the paradigm that they created for you. U.S. Department of Agriculture says 3 meals a day, all these things that you're supposed to eat, but the reality is less is more.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I tell people this all the time, like understanding intermittent fasting and autophagy is the key to a better life. Again, we've been programmed. And I use this analogy all the time is that, think about this. If you're eating 3 meals a day, if you get up in the morning and eat breakfast at 7, it usually takes anywhere between 6 to 8 hours to digest food. So if you're eating at 7, the food should be fully digested by like 2 or 3 p.m., right? But you're going to eat lunch at 12. So you're going to eat lunch at 12. So it hasn't fully finished digesting breakfast. Now you're eating lunch. So now it's digesting breakfast and lunch now. It's going to take another 6 to 8 hours to digest the lunch, 6, 8 o'clock. Now you're going to eat dinner. So you're going to eat dinner at 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock, and then it's going to take another 8 hours for that to digest. So it isn't going to be until about 3, 4 in the morning that it's fully digested, 3 meals for the day. So what happens now? It has 3 hours of rest before you get up at 7 and eat again, right? And they say that the body repairs when it doesn't have to work. It heals. So if it's spending 21 hours a day out of 24 digesting food and only 3 hours to rest and repair, think about why when you get in your 30s and 40s, you're putting on this excessive weight, why you have high blood pressure, cholesterol levels are crazy, all these type of things, because we have been running it's like running a car at 100 miles an hour for 20 years. It's going to break down. And they understand that because this is the slow drip that the medical institutions that Rockefeller created, saying that holistic practitioners were quacks, that they weren't they didn't really know what they were doing, and they said, don't do away with holistic and herbal medicines and go into this science-based and pharmaceutical-based type of industry where we're going to give you prescriptions that'll never cure you, but you won't know that, but you keep coming to get prescriptions every 30 days. They created this system where it's a slow drip mentality, methodology, because hospitals are like hotels. They have to stay booked to make profit. These beds need to be filled. If you find a hospital with no beds, with beds that aren't filled, the hospital's going to shut down. The pharmaceutical then is going to feel the ramifications of that because it needs to push drugs to keep people in the beds. So we have to understand this tethered cycle of money making that Rockefeller orchestrated. Like Rockefeller is larger than oil. And that's what I talk about in this book. I have an extensive chapter in Railroads to Robots about him because his mindset was he wanted to create a nation of workers and not thinkers. But then being not thinkers, then you're going to do whatever I throw at you. You're going to eat these 3 meals a day. You're going to follow the quote unquote food pyramid. You're going to eat these things and think that when I get older, I'm supposed to decay. I'm supposed to have issues because my grandma did. No, you don't have to have that same type of lifestyle. They say, is it in your blood? What's in my blood is the menu. I've inherited the menu that they ate. That's why you're overweight. This is why you have, lethargy and all these type of things in your system, because you are following the same menu that folks that eat these type of things. Basically, these are the ramifications of that. So this is the problem of wanting to make the decision of, okay, am I going to go down this rabbit hole and understand this conspiracy of me not living a full life or living a life? And I know I'm getting on a lot of tangents, but this is why I give thanks for you giving me the space, is that what is your real purpose for being here? As I mentioned before, being in alignment with your assignment. Why are you really here? Are you really here to get a degree and work and get 6 figures if you can, or try to chase it and then you retire and that's it? Money has gotten in the way of why we're supposed to really be here and live. What is the reason for you being here? Most folks never figure that out. And by the end of their year, end of their life, they have all these regrets. You can have these type of things right now if you start to tap into your higher source, get into your frequency, understand that there is a assortment of such of folks that have laid out a plan for you, but you don't have to follow that plan. You don't have to accept what they're telling you. You can actually do your own thing. And when you do that, you'll find that you can have a richer life.
Well, I think one thing that we talk about on this show all the time is the importance of culture.
Yes.
We have a lack of rites of passage situations for our young people. You talk about, and I really like that, be in alignment with your assignment. Or knowing your purpose in life and understanding that the system is created to keep you away from that. So when people are thinking about what they're going to do with their lives, they're motivated by, well, what's going to pay me the most?
Yep.
And it doesn't have anything to do many times with your purpose
at all.
So you take this job thinking, man, I'm going to make some money. But then they just pull you into a paradigm of debt and enslavement. So because you have that job, you can't live in a small house. You got to have a big house.
Mm-hmm.
You can't drive just any regular car. You got the flaws. So
exactly.
You end up in debt. If you went to college, you got student loan debt that you pass on to your heirs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a system that sets you up for failure. And it has a lot to do with the fact that you are not living in your purpose. The most important thing that you can do is figure out who you are and why you're here. And that determines what you're supposed to be doing. Simple things,
Absolutely.
Secondly, we have to be more in tune with nature, because everything is really against nature.
Mm-hmm.
We get up in the morning and the first thing we do is we look at our phone, and what happens when you do that is that it has a direct relationship to your dopamine and your hormone levels. And then you got the blue light that's coming off the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But what's supposed to happen when you get up in the morning is you're supposed to face some sunlight.
Mm.
And facing that sunlight has physical properties that benefit you.
Mm.
You've been asleep, hopefully, for 7 or 8 hours. 7 or 8 hours that you've had no hydration. So there's, and I'm again, thank you, YouTube University, because I'm getting all this information and I
Right.
appreciate what the algorithms are doing for me.
Right.
So the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is you drink at least 16 ounces of water. And you put a little Himalayan pink salt or Celtic salt, Celtic salt, whatever you prefer. Put that in there, alkalizes the water, rehydrate your body, and it sets you up for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So your water, your sunlight, these are things that we do to plug in. You ain't staying up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because the boob tube got you under control and you just can't turn it off.
Right.
You're depriving yourself of the repairs that are supposed to be happening in your body because you're asleep and you're not digesting food.
Mm.
So these are simple things, but we don't do that. We get up, first thing we do is drink a cup of coffee.
Mm.
And that cup of coffee sets you up for failure for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Simple things.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get to education too, because there's a connection to Rockefeller with education. And there are just so many things that have been implemented to injure us. For instance, property taxes, co-pays on insurance. The reason they have co-pays on insurance is because they want us to have to come up with some money to address our health situation. And if you're underpaid and you can't afford it and you don't have insurance, then you go without.
Mm-hmm.
Nature of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Property taxes. The property taxes they're high in communities of color.
Mm-hmm.
And there's intention about that because they realize if you can't afford to pay the tax, then the property gets taken away from you. So all these things have been happening. I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of 600 Black Wall Streets.
Mm-hmm.
Because we only think about a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it just creates that, once again, that expansive window of victimhood, like we not capable. But that there were some brothers who had petroleum companies, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they did them in. They just said, okay, well, y'all can't be doing this.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We can take this away.
Yep.
Anytime that they see us enjoying any modicum of success, it's like the green eye of jealousy, envy, and greed kicks in, and they got to take that away from you. This is a country that we live in. It's so amazing, M'Bwebe, when I look at all the information that's flowing through social media about our history and learning about these people and these situations and, looking back at the Reconstruction period. I mean, slavery, quote unquote, ended, and then Black folks started getting busy.
Mm-hmm.
And brothers were running for, seats in legislatures, and they were doing well, and then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, hold up.
Yep.
Y'all getting too much power. We got to nip this in the bud. And so the KKK takes off, and all those other groups. And so once again, we're on the receiving end of disease and dysfunction. And then along comes Rockefeller. And then everything rolls out. So, and I live in Cleveland, bro.
Right. Listen.
Right here where the epicenter was,
Right. Yeah.
And so it's really deep, brother. It's really deep. But I think what we have to do is we have to get to places where we create solutions for ourselves in all seriousness, being aware of the divinity that lives within us, being aware of our ability to address the things that are happening to us, and understanding that when we come together and we put aside our differences and we work together, we can do things that will be to our benefit, despite all the things that they're doing to us. Because think about it, man. They put some of us on slave ships or whatever you want to call them, because I know we're not using the term slave anymore. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful thing that we acknowledge that, But they did all that they did, and we still here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no matter what they do, they can't eliminate us because they didn't create us.
That's right.
You know,
And they need us.
yeah. Oh, well, you know,
They can't function without
the Cheerios commercial is the evidence of that.
right. There you go. Absolutely. I think about how, and it hit me a couple weeks ago. I was doing a show on Carl Nelson's show, and I was thinking about how we're in this, and I love to play with words and acronyms and things of that nature. And it hit me right before going on the show that we're in the age of Aquarius, right? And they call this the information age, right? So I said, well, wait a minute, the IA, and I was like, wow. So the information age, or IA, and AI needs AI. So the information age and artificial intelligence needs African intelligence or ancestral intelligence to be able to function. All this information, as you mentioned, social media has allowed us to learn things that we would never see in a book. All right. And we go back prior to social media. How do we get information? It was inside that book, very seldom in an encyclopedia, or it was told by a griot, through a community. But it wasn't a source that we can go and actually do this research. We had to hear it, hopefully, and be able to grasp it and do some research from there. So algorithms have allowed us to learn about things that were hidden, things that are becoming unearthed now. But I also believe that this is why I'm an advocate. I mentioned this in our last show about I'm such an advocate for us to become writers, to be storytellers, to tell our story, because the internet relies on it. Information age relies on it. Folks going to ChatGPT and or Grok, and they want to look up information about something, something simple. But if you go with this being Black History Month, I'm sure there's been more prompts about Black history, and we don't think about, well, where is it pulling this information from? Grok doesn't know Black history. ChatGPT doesn't know Black history. They are pulling it from LLMs. They're an LLM, a large language model. They pull the information from the internet that someone else, most likely a human, wrote. So if we want to learn about our story, but we're not the one telling it, then what's happening is you're getting a biased version. You're getting a whitewashed version. So this is why I'm also just this big advocate for us to write, to be it poetry or music or some sort of art is so important. The culture is so important to cultivate it, not just so that we don't forget, but so that we can teach AI to represent us correctly. Because if not, you're going to have a whitewashed version telling you that, they're going to tell you that Uncle Tom is a sellout, when Uncle Tom was not a sellout. It was Sambo. It irks me so many times. I hear people say, "Oh, he's Uncle Tom." You don't even know who Uncle Tom was. The term uncle was a term of endearment. Uncle Tom was the brother in this community that stood up for everyone. He would take, bullets. He would be beaten by folks on behalf of someone else that was less than. He represented the greatest of ourselves. So when we say Uncle Tom, it shouldn't be something that is demeaning. But this is what white history does: is they take our history, they flip it, so then they use it against us, and now we're calling ourselves, we're doing dishonor to Uncle Tom. So if we don't do the diligence, if we don't do the history and reclaim it, and then recite it in a palatable way for the next generation to be able to digest it, and then consume it and pass it on to the next generation, we're going to continue getting these whitewashed versions of our story, and we're going to continue to see ourselves as this lower than, this victim, as you mentioned, and that will never rise.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what else? It's important for us to document, and I'll give you an example. There's a sister here in Cleveland. She's coming up on 90. She's almost 90, but she was the first African American chairwoman or chairperson of an elections board in the entire country.
Mm.
In 1976, I believe she was appointed.
Mm.
And I interviewed her daughter, Lorna. Her name is Jane B. Sheets. her daughter Lorna is her caregiver right now because she suffered a stroke a couple years ago and she's not able to communicate. But I went online to find information about her. There's no Wikipedia. There's nothing there, you know. So the value of a platform like this is that we can create that information and put it out there so that, you know, down the road, if a child goes online, they can discover who these people are.
Right.
But it's because we take the time to document.
Exactly.
You know, I had a person that I interviewed a couple years ago, was a wood carver, took a vow of silence, really culturally strong brother, very supportive and everything. And that was the thing with him. You know, there was nothing online about him, but somebody could come to the channel because when they put that name in the search window, it brought up my video. And so family members who wanted to know more about their beloved could go and check out the video. You see, but I'm saying now all that to say that it's important for us to be the historians.
Absolutely.
You know, and to plug it into this so that people have access to what we create. So you said AI, and the first thing that I thought about was Brother Browder, ancestral intelligence, because he's big on that. And I think that we're in a place where we can't be afraid because a lot of people see AI as being something evil, but actually it's just a tool. But you mentioned something early in our conversation about AI and robotics and other things. And I'm just wondering, do you think that there will ever get to a place where there's sentience?
Absolutely. Musk is working on that, obviously. He has he's creating this is the thing. It is funny because I used to talk about how anti-Musk and all that stuff, so I wouldn't listen to him because he is an idiot, but he's a smart idiot. He's a funded idiot, which makes him very dangerous, right? But he has a creativity, he has an ingenuity, right, that is far surpasses the average person. But knowing that, you know, what he's doing with not just, you know, with electric cars with Tesla, but then he has, you know, XAI, he has SpaceX, he has Grokpedia, he's creating an Aurora and MacroHard. These are software companies he's creating. He merged AIX with SpaceX this month. It came out that they merged. So he's doing space exploration and using AI as a conduit to go beyond what average people would think that we could go. But the other thing that he's creating is the Tesla bot, or, you know, the Optimus. Optimus is, and he's looking at creating this roughly to be under $20,000. So I guess that's affordable. But he wants to roll out, basically his goal is to have a ratio of 5 to 1. For every one human being, there'll be 5 robots. That's his goal, right? And these type of robots could be both sentient, but also hybrid because of Neuralink. He owns Neuralink, and he's trying to basically put in these neural implants so that people will be merging. His thought is that we'll get left behind if we don't become one with AI, if we don't merge ourselves and have part of our body, Cyclops, or not Cyclops, but cyborg and stuff like that. So I see these things happening, and because there are people that have been financed to be able to do it. You know, he's a multi-hundred billionaire, $100+ million billionaire, because he's financed through government contracts. So they're funding him to do these type of things, and we know they're going to use these robots not to just walk down, or not to be like Rose on the Jetsons and clean your dishes. They're going to be used for military force. You know, so we're too naive to think that now you'll see in California, you'll see these robots walking down the street and they're waving at people, and people are like, "Oh, let me get my phone out and videotape. This is really cool." No, put a shotgun or a rifle on its shoulder gives a different narrative. So this is what is happening, and this is why I say, rather than be the bystander of watching and just being pissed off of what's evolving, we need to be in this space. We need to learn how to do code. We need to learn how to do algorithms and control those type of things. We need to get into studying AI's weaknesses. What are computers' weaknesses? Water and magnets to start out with. So in case that we needed to, because a rock is not going to hurt a robot in a minute. They're training robots in Japan that, can fight better than Bruce Lee. And, they don't have skin to get penetrated. So they're made out of metal. So you really can't hurt them. So coming back to 2048, it isn't really about, trying to have the physical skills to fight a robot, because that doesn't make sense. It's really about understanding your memory, understanding who you are. If we understand who we are the original AI. We are the original machine. And if you think about that, I just want to read, I had jotted a couple notes to support my claim here. Let me get it right here. Yeah, I just wanted to say these type of things. It is this ancestral intelligence whose base is connected to something much larger than our earthly concept of God that has aided the evolution of our species. To understand, you must first see yourself as a machine. Like the internet that seems to now never be off, our wireless connection to positive and negative frequencies that enable software, mental up and down grades, influence our behavior patterns on a daily basis. Our bodies are one of the first air filtering systems through photosynthesis. This is all done automatically and autonomously. You don't have to ask your lungs to expand to take in oxygen, convert it, then blow it back out as carbon dioxide. It does it automatically until it can't. We are the first, or again, earliest recorded self-governing and wireless invention. Unlike your smartphone, we don't need a cord for self-charging. We get it from sleep and sun rays. The last wire we were connected to was fixed to our mother by way of the umbilical cord, where we received not only nutrition for 9 months, we also received massive genetic, neurological, and spiritual downloads, functioning and memory data responsible for the person you are right now. Is it also ironic the belly button is in the same region that's called your core, aka the root of your essence? We have a built-in waste management system, processing and delivering nutrients and foods to needed parts of our body while ridding the rest. Visualize a sorting assembly, like separating stuff we need from what will become urine and feces. You don't have to tell your body to do this. This is intelligence. We have a defense system as well, an immune system that fights dis-ease. All it needs to remain efficient are the natural elements found in herbs, plants, fruits, and water. Remember, the original pharmacy was the farm. So I say these things because when we look at the world that we're living in and the way things are operating, everything is based off the human body. Everything is based off of, when you think about the car, the engine of a car, that is the heart. The valves are the veins. The blood is the gasoline. So when we think about these things, we are the original machine. So if we go back and think about the way it gives credence to it, it just gives massive respect to those architects that even designed the human being. And I'm not talking about this mythical Jesus or this God, but we are really a phenomenon. And if we really think about how we were designed, I think that lets you understand the one thing that I have to unfortunately tip my hat off to global white dependency is that they actually set out what they intend to do. They wanted to conquer the world. They did it. We also did this. We just forgot that we did it. And even worse, we forgot that we forgot. That's what Baba Browder talks about in his poem, Transition 13. So it's going to take a special kind of people to understand that, one, all of us ain't going to make it. Although I wish we all would, and we still could if we all decided to. But relatively speaking, I know that most folks are going to go for the handout. They don't want to take the quote unquote proverbial red pill. So it's going to take those very few folks that understand the importance of passing on, creating something better for the next generation, but also not just in verbs, but in physical manifestation. We need to have these physical things in place. We need to know how to, again, I can't implore even more. Get involved in learning how to code. learn a little bit about AI so that you can understand, well, what can I use AI for my advantage? Not to create a cheat sheet or to do a scheduling thing for me or something simple. How about study AI and say, well, hey, AI, tell me, what's your weaknesses? Don't be afraid to ask those questions because it'll tell you. And then if you find out what those weaknesses are, then okay, well then let's create something that manifests that just in case. Or if Tesla can make its own robot, why aren't we? I found videos in Africa. There are countless young people in Africa, engineers that are doing these type of things. And this is why I placed 2048 both in Brooklyn and in Kigali, Rwanda, a smart city, because there's a lot of intelligence in there. People globally, diasporically, again, African futurism. Let's look at this from a global perspective. We can do some things to survive what's coming because the pattern shows that we do. The saculum of, if you study saculums, you'll understand that society is still advanced. And as you mentioned, we're still here. As much as they try to get rid of us, we're still here. So what is it that makes us dynamic? And what will be our contributions for this go around for us to still be around, to still be here?
Mm-hmm. Ancestral intelligence, I can't help but remember, and remember is a key word because you just talked about how we forgot. Mm-hmm. We forgot who we are.
And then forgot that we forgot.
Yeah. But just going back to Imhotep,
mm-hmm.
Had there not been an Imhotep, we wouldn't even be talking about AI right now.
Yep.
So that's why it's important for us to remember. You just used the term global white dependency. And as we were having our conversation, I'm reminded of the fact that we talk about something called white supremacy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to invoke this because it's really difficult for me to say white supremacy and white supremacists and that stuff, because when you do that, you give power to the idea.
Right.
So you heard it here first on 360 Info Network. I'm saying let's change the term to white pseudo supremacy.
I like that.
It puts it in a completely different paradigm.
Right.
You know, so that we don't acknowledge that we think that that's what it is, because that ain't what it is.
Right.
It's pseudo supremacy because there has never been, even though the havoc has been wreaked for the past couple thousand years.
Yeah.
But we've been on the planet for more than 2,000 years.
Facts.
You know, and there's more history of us than there is of them.
Absolutely. According to Browder, we have 192,000 head start 192,000 year head start in history to white folk.
Yes.
So we're in the here and now, and that's the problem, is that we think that it's authentically happening now when it's been happening. And if you look at if you were to take a ruler and do a measurement of, and even Browder has the timeline. If you look at his timelines that he created, it shows that they are about a centimeter of time on this ruler. And we just happen to be in this space where it is right now. But with cycles and patterns, I'm seeing that, you know, these things, and it may take just as long to get back there, but they're approaching, if they're not at their lowest low, they're approaching their lowest low of control, and or highest high rather. And we're about to see this decline and this re-emerge of things. And, you know, they understand it. That's why they want to leave the planet. They want to go to Mars. They want to go to the moon. They want to, Elon wants to put up a shield to cover and block sun or lower the planet's temperature, because they know they can't take the sun rays from Ra. They know these things, and they know that their time is limited. It's just that they also have these resources that allows them to attempt to save themselves. That's the only thing that pisses me off about it, is that they have the funding. We bought into the monetary system that enables them, and their military might. You know, they took over Venezuela. You know, they're gonna do these things to just take over for their salvation. But time is something they can't escape. And not that I want to sit here and let time do it. We need to co-op and work with time to, you know, expedite that expiration.
Yes. The book is 2048, Sovereignty in the Age of Control, When Big Brother merges with AI. That's quite a mouthful. I'm really looking forward to reading that book.
I want to
You know,
definitely hear your thoughts on it. Yeah.
I'm putting it up there with the Celestine Prophecies. That was another book that I read back in the day.
Love it.
You know, but again, it's just so important for us to remember who we are. And so I commend you for the vision and the fact that you did it in 3 days, man. It may take me 3 days to write a poem. You wrote a whole book. So
And
I
there, and
think,
there,
go
and
ahead.
there's a book 2 and a book 3 coming. It's just like I really, again, fiction has really freed me up to really have say in what the world I want to inherit. So yeah, the 3-day thing was like I felt possessed and tapped in. But I look back at where I've come from, and it was always part of the plan, and I'm humble for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, I thank you for writing the book. I was just getting ready to ask you what new things are you working on, and I guess that's what it is. What you got coming up?
Yeah, there's going to be a book 2. There's going to be a book 2 coming out. I'm almost completed writing that one. But right now I'm want book 1 to breathe a little bit. And then I'm also working on my metaphysical book that I've been working on for over a decade. It's called The Unknown Known, Seldom Quest of Questions. And metaphysics to me is really my core. When I find out what my reason for being, metaphysics is something that always speaks to me, because I definitely know that we are here. We are a microcosm of a macrocosm. We're a smaller thing of part of a bigger thing. And this experience right now that we're having, these earthly years, are I would say just it's a footnote, or there's something larger. There's something larger. And I can't say that I'm M'Bwebe in this other form, but some aspect of me wanted to experience a life here. But part of my mission was to understand the bigger picture. And I firm believer, when you think about space and astronomy, and you think about how planets are formed, and we think about, if you want to talk about string theory, or if you want to talk about the Big Bang, like outside of everything else, we cannot deny that there's something larger than what we're experiencing here. And every night you go to sleep, you kind of go there. I'll leave with this one last thing I want to say is, experiment is, for all you listeners, if you're able to, next time you're sleeping next to your significant other, child, what have you, if you can lift their eyelids up while they're asleep without waking them up, if you lift their eyelids up, they won't see you. Now, if I close my eyelids now and I open them back up, I'm going to see you, brother, right? So your eyes are supposed to see. You lift the eyelids up, you're going to see what's in front of you. But when you are asleep, you can't see. Your eyes are not activated. So there's something in your body that, once you go into REM and you go into this other realm, cuts off the visual in your eyes. So my question is, if I'm lifting your eyelids and you're not seeing me, then where are you? And that to me is metaphysics. That to me is understanding that I am not tethered to this planet. Therefore, I don't have to be as fearful about whatever's coming, because this is temporary. This is so like, I don't like pain. I don't want to go through nothing. I don't want nothing broke, slashed, bleeding. However, this is so temporary and minute to the bigger picture. And part of my mission is to understand, comprehend, and prepare myself so that when I go back, as I mentioned in that other poem, I'll come back with some stories and battle scars. So, it's to me, I'm not spending my life worried about white folk. I'm not spending my life worried about Elon Musk and his robots and stuff like that. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to lay a foundation for those that are here in this physical realm to fight this thing so they don't become victorious. However, I do know that this is just a footnote of my full experience.
Right. Well, what you just alluded to is the fear-based reality that we live in. And you can't live your entire life in fear. You know, I mean, we concerned about things that are going to come down the road and all that other kind of stuff. But all you have is right now.
That's right.
This moment right now.
Facts.
We could talk about metaphysics for a couple hours, but I'm not going to do that to you.
For real.
But just know, when the book is done, we'll have that conversation, and I will look forward to that as well. Brother M'Bwebe, thanks for joining me on this platform.
Humble, brother.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'll mention to Wayne that we had this conversation, and then perhaps sometime in the future, because he wrote a book called Ancient Future.
Come on, man.
Okay.
Classic.
Okay.
Classic.
So
yeah.
I'm gonna bring you and him together, and then y'all can have a conversation online. How about that?
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.
All right.
M'Bwebe.
Okay. To those who are still with us, like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone else, because we talked about some significant things, and the brother does have a book for sale. So I'm trusting that you will go ahead and pick up your copy of that, and we will reconvene sometime in the near future. Until then, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
Bless up.